Welcome to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. My name is Mark Jacobson. I'm Senior Programming Manager at UMS. Today, we have the pleasure to present a maverick, hyper-realistic painter and photographer, Marilyn Minter. Thank you to our partners, as today's program is brought to you with support from the Institute for Research on Women and Gender, the Institute for the Humanities, and University of Michigan Museum of Art, UMA. A couple of announcements. The gratitude campaign table is in the lobby, and we have student Josie Burke helping facilitate today. We are taking this fall season to gather thoughts around the series and its impact. We ask that you please join us in expressions of gratitude by sharing your reflections and ideas about the speaker series through a letter to the Stamps family. Stationery is provided. We also invite you to become a friend of the Penny Stamps series by joining us with your financial support to help us continue the legacy of what Penny has built here. Additional information is available in the lobby. Highly recommended in closing soon, Wit Artist in Residence, Korean artist Joo-yoon Kim's work is on view in Detroit at the Center Galleries at the College for Creative Studies, right behind the DIA. White Garden with White Noise is an immersive installation which honors the suffering of the Korean comfort women and is on view through November 2nd. Please check that out. Next week, we host two events. Our regular Thursday here at Michigan Theater with Irish street artist Joe Caslin, and then a special event on Friday, November 1st at the Bethlehem United Church in Ann Arbor, just a few short blocks from here on 4th Avenue between William and Packard Streets, featuring John Cameron Mitchell. Costumes are encouraged, as he will be giving away 2 pairs of tickets to the best dressed to his UMS performance of The Origin of Love Tour at Hill Auditorium on Saturday, November 2nd. For now, please remember to silence your cell phones and mobile devices. We will have a Q&A today in the screening room. Please join us directly following this presentation. Exit left and down the hall to get to the screening room. Please also note that Nicola's Books is in the lobby this afternoon selling Marilyn Minter's latest monograph, Pretty Dirty. Books will also be signed by the artists. And now, for an introduction of our guest today, Institute for the Humanities, Amanda Krugliak.
How do you write an introduction for a cultural icon? And your own fantasy and role model? The who's who of provocateurs. Her name's synonymous with maverick, trailblazer, individualist, rebel, nonconformist. The bad girl of the art world, whose monumental paintings champion unbridled and unapologetic female sexuality and fantasy. The artist that you would most like to go to dinner with, get a pedicure, tell her your secrets, get in a brawl, a partner in crime. Her work is potent, visceral, punk, hedonistic, naughty, dirty, alluring, repulsive, steamy, surly, nasty, sultry, sweaty, pathological, glamorous, glitzy, raunchy, ribald, racy, body, indecent, risque, titillating, smutty, X-rated, saucy, gamey, salacious, coarse, vulnerable, obscene, gorgeous, sublime, imperfections and all. For decades, Marilyn Minter has explored society's ever-shifting and complicated attitudes towards the female body, attempting to subvert the male gaze, flipping the narrative, celebrating the empowerment in claiming our own bodies and pleasure as women, our own sexual agency without shame. The work also examines dissonance and distortion, our personal thoughts about our bodies, the unrealistic and unmet expectations, the external influences from fashion, advertising, burlesque, and pornography. She is deeply committed to activism, to civil rights, and considers this a very critical part of her creative process. Born in Shreveport, Louisiana in 1948, Minter went on to receive her BA from the University of Florida, Gainesville, 1970, and MFA from Syracuse University in 1972, becoming part of the robust New York art scene in 1978. Heralded for her work by a whole new wave of young feminists, she has been recently featured in a number of social and solo exhibitions nationally and internationally, including Simon Lee Gallery, London, 2019, Lehman Maupin, Hong Kong, China, 2018, and her retrospective, Marilyn Minter, Pretty Dirty, which traveled from the Contemporary Arts Museum, Houston, to the Museum of Contemporary Art, Denver, and the Brooklyn Museum between 2015 and 2017. She is in the collections of the Guggenheim Museum, New York City, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, San Francisco, California, the Museum of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles, California, among others. Please join me in welcoming Marilyn Minter.
Thank you so much for coming. And Amanda, that was really some introduction. I hope you're not too disappointed. So I'll just start with, these are books I found lying around. This is a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale book, and I saw this drawing. I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I thought it was really interesting that I drew a high heel shoe, and it ended up being something I really did concentrate on when much later. So these are my earliest drawings that I could find. And I don't know, some of you probably learned how to draw from manga, but I learned how to draw strictly from comic books. And it wasn't like I was, I was just drawing with my friends that were brownies. Those are baby Girl Scouts. Back in the 50s in Florida, and my brownies were so much better than my friends, and it's the first thing I ever found out that I could do. So I made everybody teach me everything they knew about drawing, and my family didn't know anything, so comic books were my source. So this next body of work I'm going to show you was the first body of work that anyone knows me for. And I took these pictures when I think I was 20, 1969 in University of Florida. And it was just one weekend where I went home and took pictures of my mother. And she was a drug addict. But at the time, I just thought she was crazy. I didn't really pay attention. And this was Florida. Now it's Florida man or Florida woman. But people go to Florida in the 50s and the 60s to escape and to get lost, and you see the repercussions of all these children born there. And so this was not that unusual. My friends' mothers were like this too. But it was this kind of drug addict that she still she had this illusion of getting dressed up and wearing negligees and swanning around. But there was always something wrong. She had acrylic nails, but she was so high all the time they would just get funguses. So she had to constantly pull, and she also pulled her hair out, so she wore wigs. So it was something really off, even though she was at one time a really beautiful woman. And so I took this set of pictures, And I took them back to the University of Florida, not thinking anything of it, really. It was just one week, and I just say, Mom, will you pose for me? And at the University of Florida was in upstate Florida, and it was a lot more conservative. So they were more people from, the South rather than the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. And they were horrified by these pictures. This is Mom dyeing her eyebrows. And that was like my first taste of, oh, wow, there's something wrong with this picture. So, and I felt such shame about it that I didn't show them anymore, and I never even printed them. But I went to this school, University of Florida. I was an undergraduate, and it was in the 60s, and it was just mired in abstract expressionism. In other words, if you were an artist, a true artist, that was when there was this like movements that were lasted like 5 years or 10 years, or now movements last like 6 months or something. But back then, it was like if you were a true artist, you really were, you were a gestural artist, and you were an expressionist. And I really mean this. My first painting class, you just walked in, no still life, no setup, no model, and you were just supposed to start painting. That's how they believed that this was the only true way to make art. And somebody like me, who I could draw, but I couldn't paint at all. And so I was like lost. So I started taking pictures out of magazines, and that's how I learned how to paint, is painting from magazine images, and that's how it started to make sense to me. And then I realized, because I got an A in photography, I got a C in painting, so I majored in photography. So by the time I was a junior, I saw that I could change the images. And so I went to grad school on these images, on these magazine images. And then when I got in grad school, I started working with this was the end of grad school, I'd say, and I liked the idea of being a photorealist, because that was I modeled myself over Andy Warhol and all the pop artists, but photorealism was just really hit big in the 70s in New York City, and I thought of myself as this is photorealism, but it's an oil paint, but I made all of these different images, and I thought I was brilliant. I thought, these are just so great, It's like, I took linoleum floors and I laid it down on my wooden floor, and then these are the tape off of the back of the linoleum. And then the picture on the I guess it's you are right, is just a piece of plywood on the floor. And I thought I was so smart, I made this too, which was working from my black and white. And I thought these were the best thing, and I thought everyone was gonna love these, and I was like a really interesting conceptual photorealist. And I would take these to the galleries, and they go, you're a photorealist, but you're really boring. And I thought, what am I gonna do, I mean, I started painting spills and scuff marks, but nobody paid any attention to these paintings, so I just packed them away. I had them all. And I thought it was so smart to paint black and white photos. And that was what I was doing, painting. At that time, if you went to art school, you still had a camera and you still worked in a darkroom, and it was art if you made black and white photos. Color was, just coming into art schools, and digital didn't exist. So these were 8 by 10 photos, and I just made them a little bigger and made paintings of them. And I left them in this raw canvas, all scuffed up, so you would know it's a painting on a piece of raw canvas. And I had all these packed away, but it was the beginning of that same kind of, which is what you see constantly in art history. It's the next movement is going to be the exact opposite of the movement preceding it. So Rococo went to neoclassicism, Baroque, and abstract expressionism went to pop, then to and then I guess you could say conceptualism was right in there too, and video. So then these things movements started moving a lot faster, and then there was this huge European influence and these American expressionists like Julian Schnabel and David Solly. And being able to have the skill level, I thought I couldn't make it work. It was like, just because I had the skill, nobody was interested, and it was just, you were considered a photorealist, which is like a kiss of death. And back then, it might be today too, I'm not really sure. But, it was like technical masturbation, that's what everybody thought. And so I thought, well, I tried to do these expressive gestures, but they were terrible. So I started working with a German artist who came over here in this German expressionist movement. This was around Polka and Richter and a lot of expressionists, and I guess Julian Schnabel was the star of it. So he and I would paint on top of each other. And it was really good because it opened me up, and I learned all these another technique. Like I learned about projection, and we made all of these different paintings. But what happened is this was in the bad old days in the '80s in the East Village, and we really had to clean up our act. So we fought all the time, and the paintings, nobody would really buy them. They were kind of interesting, and they were these expressionist paintings, but everyone thought this partnership wasn't gonna last because we fought so much. So I did clean up my act, and I had to make this whole new body of work. And this is in 1986. I'd say a whole new body of work that didn't look like anything I had done before, because I was leaving this expressionist artist behind and our career in the East Village, and I didn't want to make photorealism, so I just gave up my skill level totally, and I just was trying to think of art in terms of other images. I stopped using my own photos, I stopped using magazine. Well, I started using magazine images, but old ones. Like, I looked through these encyclopedias, and I found this picture of, I think it's Sophia Loren and Jane Mansfield. And I thought that was the first time I took an image that was, if you see the red section, that one is the actual image that I silk screened, and then I put a layer of acrylic over it. And then I took a projector and took it at an angle, and then I projected the image till it was fractured. And then I fractured it more, and I put this little girl looking in a funhouse mirror that I got from these old encyclopedias. And that's the same, so on the other side of the room, they had the big girls, and then the little girls were all this distortion. But I sort of just projected all of this, and I even distorted it more. We would call, in those days you called it a Velux. Any image you would get out of like an old Life magazine, if you blew it up, it was all these dots. And so I just had these images made into a dot screen. And I just turned the projector on and painted it. And so it didn't look like anything I'd done before. And so then I started really playing with the enamel paint. And because at this point I'm working with it like one hard edge next to another, these dots. And I started letting it drip a bit. And I had this idea that this is a bunch of paintings that I called food porn, because there were all these ads on late night TV, advertising, like called 1-800-EXCOR services. This was on David Letterman and the old Nightline shows late at night, like 11:30, 12:30, 1:30. And so I thought, I want to make a bunch of these paintings, and I will paint really sloppily the first layer, and then I'd have these assistants come in and paint the dots with the projector on. And so I worked on this day and night for, I don't know, a year, trying to get about 100 of them, I actually made 110 altogether. And there was just these hands pulling apart food, only so I could make this TV commercial, which is coming up. And I paid everybody by giving them a painting, because we had no money. And so, I mean, I had no money at all. So, you would think, I know you can't, I can't see you, but anyone want to guess how much a 30-second spot would be on David Letterman? Just call out a number. 2 million. Yeah, isn't that funny? And I'm an artist in Soho with no money, living in a 2,500 square foot loft with no furniture. It was $1,800 for 30 seconds. So in those days, this was 1989, whenever you had a show, the dealers would give you money to buy ads in Art Forum, Art America, and I think it was Flash Art. So I took that money, didn't advertise at all, and just bought these spots. And so here is the TV commercial that was on Letterman, Arsenio Hall, and Nightline.
In which our effort in the Middle East collapses.
Let me ask you just to take a break for a second. We've got to take a quick break, and I'll come back and let you continue that thought when we continue our conversation with Henry Kissinger and James Webb in a moment.
So if you didn't know what it was, you wouldn't know what it was.
Like incense? You put incense or something in there?
It's a microphone.
And I sent out cards
that's
inviting
different.
everybody to watch
But see,
the
you knew
TV,
that.
watch David Letterman,
You in Philly saying,
or Arsenio Hall, or Nightline.
well, we got to take commercial. Take commercial, we'll come right back, and our mothers will be out here, and they'll fight for a while. We'll be right back.
I basically made the first TV commercial advertising a commercial show.
Two of your favorites, M&M's and peanut butter,
I left some of these
are
ads
together at
in.
last. Introducing M&M's peanut butter chocolate candies. Pure milk chocolate, real peanut butter, your favorite chocolate candy, now with creamy peanut butter. New M&M's
My
peanut butter
name,
chocolate
Marilyn Minter.
candies. The best thing to happen to peanut butter since jelly.
I don't even have to see it again, but I just want to tell you right away before, I just realized that most of you are young art students, and whenever you see an artist come to give a talk like this, they are showing you the absolute best they do. So for every single one of these JPEGs, there are 300 that you aren't seeing. I mean, you have to make so many bad things to make anything that you'd want to show to a university at a lecture like this. So I want you to know that you're only seeing the absolute best I can do. And I've been honing this lecture since I started doing these talks back when I was right out of grad school. So you're seeing, well, this painting, okay, this is a start of when she was talking about how I got myself into so much trouble. And this was, I'm of course, at the time, a budding feminist, and I really believed in nobody has politically correct fantasies. And I thought it was time for women to make images for their own amusement and pleasure. And what brought me around to this was I saw this Mike Kelly show. Does everyone know who Mike Kelly is? So I saw this show when he first came out with the stuffed animal sculptures and these candles on a table all melted down. And this brilliant intellectual from LA, would make felt banners and stuffed animal sculptures that hanged on the wall like a painting. And I thought, God, this is brilliant. And all he really did was, it was almost like taking an adolescent girl's bedroom, He had this chest of drawers that was decoupaged with eyes and mouths, and he had a picture of himself underneath the dresser. These are the kind of things we did, when we were little girls. And we had crushes on some guy in high school or elementary school or whatever. And I thought, what subject matter, if a woman made this entire body of work, nobody would give her the time of day. And I thought, well, what subject matter have women never tackled? And it occurred to me, porn. Women don't own the agency of making porn. They don't do it. They don't make images of it. And the only ones I knew about were Carol Lee Schneeman, and I knew that Judith Bernstein had made those screws. So I thought these were kind of softcore. So I thought I had to do hardcore. And I did them exactly like I did the food porn. And I thought this was like, oh, I'm owning reproduction. What does this mean when an artist takes images that are already in the culture from an abusive history and repurposes them? Now, I just thought everyone thought like I do. They were all pro-sex feminists. I was wrong. I know Holly Hughes teaches here too, right? She was in this movement too. We were, I don't know if she's here tonight, but we were sort of in this film club of bad girls, basically. And we watched women that were trying to own pictures of sexual imagery, which was verboten if you were young. I mean, there were lots of, there was that famous picture of Louise Bourgeois holding that giant dildo that Mapplethorpe took. But she was in her 80s, and everyone thought she was adorable. But it's still the glass ceiling for women right now is owning any kind of sexual imagery. You saw what happens to Madonna or Miley Cyrus or any young, beautiful girls trying to own agency. And so I was thrown out of the art world, basically. And I kept going. I don't know, there was this part of me that thought, well, if you don't like this, when do you see this? Or, And, but this was shocking to people. I know it looks like nothing, but it was shocking to people at the time. But it's when I stopped, I was getting beat up. I got thrown out of shows. My gallery closed the gallery closed the show that I had down a week early, and I was feeling really beat up. So I started doing the same thing, but I started beating up my surfaces because I was feeling beat up. I didn't really, trust me, I didn't know it at the time. I just see it in retrospect that I was feeling beat up, so I took a belt sander to my paintings, and I put acid on them, and now it makes sense why I did this, but what I stopped doing is the veloxes. I stopped doing the dot screen. And it sort of really naturally came into doing close-ups of body parts. Because I'm sort of allergic to nostalgia and narrative, and I like to make art about the times I live in. And I thought, well, these are images that people know exist, but they never see pictures of. Like dyeing your hair. These are all paintings, but they're not big. They're kind of, 3 by 2 feet or something like that. And I made this whole series, and it sort of got me out of where I was with the hardcore porn. This is everyone thinks it's pubic hair or something, but it's really just an armpit with hair growing out of it. And these are all close-ups. I like the idea of these images that we all knew existed. You took down your sock and you had these lines in your legs. And so I just I took a lot of photos of it and I just painted them directly from the photos. I didn't change it at all. And at this point I was just making things bigger. And I started learning how to really work with enamel, layers and layers of enamel. And I was all alone, so I did all of the painting on these. But it took me so long because there's so many layers of enamel because it's translucent, and you can see the colors behind. You could really work like an old master with this enamel paint. And so this is, I couldn't, but it took me so long to make a painting. I had to fill up the gallery with images. So I actually started showing the photos that I took. So when I was having, this is when I first started showing again after getting thrown out of the art world. Oh, this is the interesting part. The art world is filled with cliches. And when I couldn't get in any shows and people were writing terrible reviews and excoriating reviews, they'd let me back in when I showed the pictures of my mother. Because that was when they said, oh, she must be serious because she comes from dysfunction. Which, so in the world, my mother was a nightmare to have as a mother, but she actually helped my career. What are you gonna do? But everything works out the way it's supposed to in that sense. I mean, I'm totally intuitive artist, and I really do listen to that inner voice. And so at this point in my life, even though I had had all this criticism, I didn't care. I knew I had something to say. And I sort of just, I believed, you know, even though nobody was paying attention. So at this point, I started taking images, and Photoshop became a big part. As soon as Photoshop was invented, I just went crazy on it, because it was almost like taking my own photos and then changing the drawing, and which is what I love to do. So this is a painting of that. Yeah, that's a photo, and then this is what I would make a painting of. But this one actually has layers of Photoshop in it. And I still would paint from this thing called a reference. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And this is in the early 90s. So this is a photo. And I'll show you some of the photos that came out of this. And this is when I started getting attention again, because I was taking images that I was sort of interested in the times we live in, and I was thinking about how, porn, that's contemptible in the culture, so is fashion and glamour. It's really contemptible in the culture. It's so shallow, and people have, people I knew who were academics would hide their magazines if they had parties, their Vogues or something, their IDs. So I thought, this is really $1 billion, trillion industry. And I like the idea of taking, images from this culture and seeing what I could do with it. Because, human beings are riddled with imperfection. And, I saw that everyone was photoshopping out every single thing. And it makes people, very unhealthy trying to be perfect. And I saw that, and I saw this industry, yet I also saw the same industry giving real places of power to women. And that was the only place they had. And then I saw that it gave body dysmorphia and all kinds of unhealthy behaviors. And at the same time, it's this $1 billion, jillion industry that everybody works with. Even if you are not at all glamorous or fashionable, that's a look. So everybody knows their tribe. They know how they look. They present themselves. And I thought this was really the same kind of contemptible subject matter as pornography. It's like $1 billion, jillion industry. There would be no internet without pornography. And it's like artists had such contempt for it, and they still do. But I think that's, riveting, something to work with. So instead of I took the fashion world images, and instead of kissing the jewels lightly, the models would shove the jewels down their mouths so they started to gag. And that's what all of these are. That's they would bite into an egg, or just, the eggs and jewels are all over near mouths in all the fashion world. And so I just had her bite into an egg. And these are, and the same with, really expensive shoes. If you dance all night, your feet are gonna get dirty, and especially if you live in New York City. And so, I mean, no matter how expensive your shoes are, if it's raining, this could happen to you, and you just never see a picture of it. Or if you see dirt or freckles or any of that, in the fashion world, it's placed with tweezers. And so these were shots I took. And at the same time, I put billboards up with Creative Time all over Manhattan. And you didn't know what it was, just like the TV commercial. You just saw these images. And that was that body of work. So you see, I worked with high heels from when I was a little tiny girl to, I guess this is in the 90s. And then I got put in the Whitney Biennial. And so then I got rediscovered again. And this is when I really started working with combining images. So at this point, this is 3 layers of Photoshop. The left side and the right side are from totally different negatives. The drops on the end of the eyelashes are from totally different negatives. So I was really playing with Photoshop now. And these were pretty big paintings, 5 feet by 8 feet. They took a really long time. So I started working with a crew of people who I taught underpainting to. And this is a photo. So at the same time, I still could not fill up a show. even though these paintings took 6 months at this time. So I always had photos in. And the photos at this point were something I didn't do anything to. Excuse my voice, because I woke up with a head cold this morning, and it's a little hoarse. But this is something I didn't even crop. So all the photos from now on are not manipulated at all. But the paintings, and you really can't tell the difference from reproductions. But I thought, this is, everybody knows pimples. Everybody knows, what your makeup looks like when it's running, but you never see pictures of it. So these are some paintings, some photos. I really, really got into freckles because they were all taken out. You never saw models with freckles. They were all photoshopped out. So I really pushed freckles everywhere. These are all paintings. And then I got into, these are getting bigger and bigger. And then I got into bubbles and freckles. So you'll see a whole bunch of work here now with bubbles and freckles. And this is a video a friend of mine took, and that's one fingerprint of patting down this enamel paint. I use fingers, I use my palm, I'll use gloves, I'll just pat the enamel down to make the layers thin. So here's what it looks like. That's just one fingerprint. And here's what it looks like in the whole painting. And that's the painting. So you can see the immensity of the complexity, hopefully, from these slides. So they're getting more and more abstract. And then this next body of work, I sort of haven't gone back. Everything now is behind glass. I came off the subway one day and I saw this woman holding a bag of a shopping bag that had a tongue on it with something yellow on the end of the tongue. And I thought, oh, what would it look like painting with your tongue? At the very same time, I got asked by MAC Cosmetics to shoot these eyes for them, with a bunch of other artists got asked to collaborate with MAC. So I started shooting under glass, and while I was shooting, I took one of those really cheapo videos that are in the camera. Early on. This was, I guess, 2006 or 8. And I really liked what that looked like. And then I liked the idea of spitting. So what I did was I had the models licking the glass between shoots. So they would change their eye makeup, and I hired the models because of their tongue size, long tongues. And so we would get cake decoration and mix it with vodka. And I had the models, I was shooting underneath the glass. They were on top, but they couldn't breathe, because if they breathe, then it fogs up. So it had to be these quick shots. So all of these are huge paintings that were, that's 80 layers of Photoshop. So these are huge, huge paintings. They're 15 feet by 9 feet. They're in my show in LA at Reagan Projects back in, I guess it's 2009. And then this is the video I made called Green Pink Caviar. And just like when I showed that TV commercial, I made this to go in. I knew people that owned this movie theater, Landmark, and I made this to go between movies. This is what I made it for. And this was just the promo for the show, and it was, you know how they have previews for movies? I wanted this to be in it, and it was at the Sunshine Theater on Houston Street for about, whoops, sorry. Okay, it should show, no, it didn't shoot. Let's try again. Is Andrew here? Oh, there it is. And so that was like my preview for my show. And anyway, Madonna ended up seeing it and bought it for her Sticky and Sweet tour as the opening shot. And then it was on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood for a long, long time. And then I guess it was also on the MTV billboards for about 3 months in New York City. So it got a lot of attention at the time. Now this is at the same time, I guess I was doing this friend of mine, Wangechi Mutu, who asked me to document her pregnancy. She was 8 months pregnant, and she styled herself, and we were just playing around. And I shot her pregnant, and then these paintings are what I also came making. Now there's no gold paint in this. This is all oil. This is all enamel paint. Just it's white and different colors of brown and yellow, and I just love these paintings. So I showed you a couple of paintings. This is the first photo of Wangechi, and then I made about 5 paintings from that series. And then I started shooting in terms of making these paintings, like a rainy night in Manhattan and an old billboard with graffiti on it. And I was thinking what it's like if you're driving down the street and your headlights hit these old billboards that rain on them. And I was just playing around with like silver paint and gold paint and splashing it and then making paintings out of it. This is actually a photo. And then this next piece is a video I made. I was in this show, we're coming up to the present, and I was in this show at the Brooklyn Museum called Killer Heels, and all the other artists in the show were really famous, very good fashion photographers like Stephen Klein or Mizell or Nick Knight, and I knew they would have these really slick, beautiful, I think we had to do 5-minute commercials, or 5-minute videos, and so this was mine. This is a promo for it too. Oh, this is interesting. I'll tell you in a minute. Listen to the sound. This guy got really famous. I should have told you this earlier, but does anyone know who Ludwig Göransson is? He's the producer of Childish Gambino. And he also did the soundtrack for, he won an Oscar for Black Panther. But when he worked with me, he was like 26 years old. We worked on a computer 2 nights and we made the soundtrack for the whole Smash video. So I'm really proud that he worked for free for nothing. I gave him an inkjet. So a very sweet guy too. So anyway, I've been working behind glass for a long time now, and these are some of the photos. I just put them here together. That I just like the way that it takes, it makes sort of it takes away the narrative. It gives you more of a distance, so that. Like, here's an example. I could show you the bones of how I make these paintings. This was a photo I took in 2000, and then the image underneath it is that same photo that I put a piece of glass on top of it with graffiti on top of that, and then I just shined some glare. So it was like how I can cannibalize myself, my own advertising, because I shot that eye for a magazine. So it was kind of how I can make paintings of. So I piggyback every chance I get when I get commercial gigs, although I don't get that many. And I like the idea of the glass and the broken. you have this graffiti alley here, and there's something that's still really nostalgic for me, even though I thought when I was walking through it, I felt like the 1980s in New York City, which is sort of what I'm mimicking in all of these. These are giant paintings, maybe 15 feet, again, by 9, and layers of Photoshop. One shoe might be from one image, but I just put it together. Same with this one. That's more like eyelashes from an old photo I did in 2005 or something, and I just put glass on top of it. And then here's like, I'll show you the entire process. Here's the finished painting. But this image is what I started with. This is the bones. That same girl, she was one of my students when I was teaching I still teach at School of Visual Arts. But I loved her look, and she was covered in freckles. And I took a piece of glass and I put it in front of her with the graffiti and the water running down as the rain. And that was the bones. That's the beginning. That's how I started. And then I think I even may have, no, I didn't. I haven't drawn this out yet. But this one is how I changed it. I turned the circle into another image. I turned the V kind of mark into another image. And so I actually painted this entire thing, but and I didn't like it, so I wiped off the entire left side and put that in. So this is like a year's worth of work, rather. And so that's the top one is the beginning, and the bottom one is the finished product. So they really are time-consuming and labor-intensive, and they take about a year to do. And then now I get into the breath of life, or what it looks like to breathe, and I started working with steam and frost on glass, and this is that series. This is a painting, and these are great big paintings. And from there, lo and behold, I was noticing that there was no pubic hair anymore in the culture. And I thought to myself, well, I'll just make pictures of pubic hair. Well, there's no pubic hair anywhere in art history either. I mean, you could name like 10 paintings. I could find maybe 10, 15 paintings or sculpture with pubic hair. I mean, think about, the birth of Venus, Botticelli. I'm going all the way back to everything, they just eliminate it. So I thought, I think I'm going to make pictures of pubic hair that are so beautiful that you could put them in your living room, which I did. And that's a painting that goes over somebody's fireplace. Is there a Tisch building here? Yeah, Jamie Tisch owns it. It's on her fireplace. Nobody knows what it is. Here's a redhead. But I tried to make them like, you just wanted to just fall into the beauty of the painting itself. I call this one 2 Green Lights. Nobody buys them. Well, that's not true, but a few people buy them. But I think they're really good, and I think they're my favorite of all the work I do. But I'll just keep them until somebody wants to put them all together in a show. So this is very subtle. So I was thinking about the the idea of making these images of things that, we all have, but no, same thing, you just don't see it in the culture, you never see pictures of it. And I thought, well, I got into the shower scenes to do the pubic hair, so I thought, well, how come we never see 21st century bathers painted by women? I mean, we always see the bathers all through art history. The first earliest one I could find was George de la Tour, of a woman grooming, picking off fleas. And that was, but there's no women painting other women grooming. And I thought, what would that look like? So I started this whole bather series. And what I'm working on right now, I'm having a show. It's interesting, I'm having a show in France in May, it starts in May, of all female bathers, 21st century ones. So you're seeing a preview of all these paintings. And then this was my show in LA a year and a half ago at Reagan Projects with everybody's behind some kind of shower scene. Everything in here. And then that's the painting on I guess on that side of the wall, that's called Delta. And it's, but everyone just thinks it's an abstract painting. On the left side, the right side, sorry. On this, when I'm looking here, it's the right side. Then Donald Trump won. And I got really pissed off, and I thought, well, here's somebody who, women are cunts, so I'm gonna own the word. I took all my attitudes from queer theory, and I just said, if we're gonna be called cunts, I'm gonna shove it down their throats. So I made this video, which is you're gonna see, and I just had everybody change. These are some of the stills from it. I had friends of mine come in and write on the glass, on frosted glass. So it's called this is My Country 'Tis of Thee, with D-U-N-T. So here's a preview of it, the video. And this is a model I found on the internet. I use her all the time. She's got a great look. So that's I guess it's a 8-minute video with people writing different things. No Country for Old Men, My Country 'Tis of Thee. I don't think I have any more in here. Yeah, there's a video. And then these are the latest shower paintings. These are the absolute latest ones. Some of them they're in progress. So I'll show you what's going to be in my show in France. And this is a preview. And they're large. They're all 7 feet, 8 feet, 5 feet, something like that. And this last model, I made. I think these are all. Yeah, that's the only finished painting. The rest are progress. At one time, the painting on the left, that was the painting. But I hated how she looked so pre-Raphaelite or so pretty. So I just erased it. And now it's the painting on the right. And I like it a lot better, but it's still not finished. I'd have the top, I just don't have the bottom yet. So I'm showing you my process too. And then that's a work in progress that's still being painted on. And then I think that's the last one. So this is what I'm doing now, and I'm going to answer questions if you'd have any questions, and we're going to be in the screening room. I think it's in the back of the building, but you know where it is, right? Yeah. So thank you for showing up.